Kind of face to the other. The red color is fashionable and brown become fashionable. And in the world of therapy, it's a bit similar to that. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we talked highly, or even a bit more than that, about CBT and the world seeing life from CBT. And in world of addiction, 25 years ago, it was fresh ideas of relapse prevention. Everybody talks about relapse prevention. Nowadays, it's everybody talks about trauma. So the world seeing from trauma perspective now. This is a hot topic. And the reason for that, I'm not going to go into the details, but the reason for that is science, really. They manage to see what's going on inside our brain, and they understand more how our brain function under stress. And with this, and medical people here can correct me, this clearer vision of what's going on in our brain under stress helped us to understand more about trauma. And that's bringing to our world a new vision of how trauma developed and how it's treated too. So we're going to walk or talk through some of these ideas of how we engage with trauma, how we work with people traumatized. Let's start with this idea. I'm not going to share with you a model of ministry with trauma. I'm just going to share with you a few ideas. What is trauma and how we maybe integrate being trauma-informed into your own setting, your own ministries. There is 3 levels of engaging with trauma. There is trauma aware, trauma-informed, and trauma therapy, if you like. Trauma aware is when you are in the kind of your ministry or people who are engaging with your church or your work, have some good ideas about what trauma is about and not making big mistakes around people suffering from a trauma. That's kind of trauma aware. You go deeper and your church or your ministry or your work will be trauma informed, where people are a bit more trained and know how to handle themselves around somebody traumatized or suffering from a post-traumatic stress disorder. And you go deeper with a lot of training and a lot of understanding of how to walk with somebody developed PTSD or really traumatized, and how to walk the journey of processing this and help the person to get through life out. So I'm kind of not really going to go anywhere near trauma therapy. This is maybe not for today, and it's not for 45 minutes left for us. It's just not possible really to do that. So I'm going to be really giving a glimpse of what being trauma aware or trauma informed, and how have kind of a better picture of that. Wanted just to raise your hand if you work with trauma or you are aware. Golly, that's quite a lot. So we're really going to learn from each other. This is a lot of you with experience. I'm not talking to naive people here. So good. Okay, let's kind of start with defining trauma. What comes into your head? How do you define trauma? What do you think? Maybe get 2 or 3 to give us some ideas. Hurt. Fear. Issues with the heart. Yep, dysregulation. Stress. Pain and loss hasn't been processed. abuse.
So physically as a cut, it isn't the cut itself, it's the event of being cut. And then living with the scar tissue is the kind of living with the trauma. It changes us. Those bits, the scar tissue is less flexible. So post-trauma is living with the scar. The trauma is the event of being cut, and the visible thing is the cut. I mean, I'm talking in physical terms, but it can be emotional or spiritual. Yeah.
I'm not going to repeat that. This is enough. So I'm not going to add any more. I'm going to put this, it's all right actually, and give us just a kind of a bigger picture of what we are talking about here. But this is kind of, I put a couple of definitions there. Maybe I will kind of carry on. It's basically trauma is a mental or emotional or psychological overload effect from a deep disturbing or distressing or horrifying events. So basically, something hits us, overwhelming our system, that our system cannot or unable to process whatever that hit us. That could be emotional or mental or physical, just something more than what we can cope with. This is obviously different from one to another. Somebody can get pushed, a little push like that, and have a little move, or a strong body will not move, and this little push can push somebody that far, and it's still a little push. So it's to do, or in relation to our system, really. Whatever can that push is related to us, and how much we can cope, or how much support we have in order to process that. And it's basically, another definition is unresolved emotional experience. It's this, there is this idea of us being traumatized, all of us facing trauma all the time. And all of us getting over the trauma that we are facing all the time. We are, it's built in our system to process the trauma that we are facing. Things doesn't go our way, and we get over that. Things that upset us or upset our system, and we get over it. But trauma develop when our system unable to get over whatever that is. Gonna be clearer, I guess, as we go. So what I'm kind of sharing here is trauma is word of time. Our system, normally, when we face something not usual for us or difficult for us we stop and we process what's happening, and we kind of separate the emotion from kind of the incident. What I mean by that, I kind of, when I was maybe 2 or 3, I put not me, a little child, put his finger in fire, on the fire, or try to hold a candle or something, burn the kind of his hand. That little child traumatized by the pain. But normal way of processing this is getting the idea of fire is not to be touched. Fire is dangerous, and process this incident or experience, and the child will learn not to touch the fire, and this become a logical concept stored in one part of his brain, and the pain and the hurt and the burn and all that will disappear from the system. This is a normal way of getting over trauma. When this burn burn all his arm, for example, it become very difficult to process. And that child unable to separate the pain of the hurt from the experience. So it become not logical anymore. And every time that child see fire or candle, the pain can come back. And that's trauma hasn't been trauma developed and hasn't been processed. Kind of this is the idea. So we process most of the traumas all the time. We are able, and occasionally something gets stuck in that system and not being processed. Moving on, I'm just gonna separate different types of trauma. Type 1 trauma is this kind of incident that happens like road traffic accidents, for example, or attack. This is kind of what we call it type 1. There is another type, is the incident that repeatedly happened. If you go and buy a car, for example, car involved in one accident and repaired, it's weakened, and the chassis is not very strong. But if car engage in 2 accidents, it become quite serious. It's more than that. Don't buy this car. It look good. It look very sounds, and it drives as fast as any other car. But actually, that this type of accident weaken the car to the extent that make it kind of not very robust. Our internal world is a bit like that. The repetition of the exposure is kind of impacting us differently from one-off. And obviously the getting over it is kind of different. The type 1 from different from type 2. Also the trauma with a small t or large t, this is another way of understanding trauma or defining trauma. We're talking here about small t is the experiences that doesn't qualify the trauma to become post-traumatic stress or develop post-traumatic stress disorder. We're going to see the diagnosis of that. So we're talking now about a kind of verbal abuse, a divorce. The divorce is a traumatic experience, but it's not likely to develop PTSD. Crisis, kind of getting ill, facing cancer, that kind of stuff. The trauma with large T is the events that commonly associated with developing post-traumatic stress disorder. That's near-death experiences more likely to develop PTSD. Not every near-death experience develop PTSD, but it's more likely than not near-death. So we're talking about big hit that very hard to process. Very much out of the ordinary for our life experiences. So, what is the post-traumatic stress disorder? It's kind of mental health disorder. By the way, trauma is not mental illness, or I call it not mental illness. Trauma is natural response to abnormal kind of events in life. So it's actually the event that we are facing is the abnormal, and our response, being traumatized, is naturally normal. Where kind of when it's developed to post-traumatic stress disorder, it's now kind of our mental health affected by the natural response, if you like. So we all meant to be traumatized, and we're all meant to get over it. But if our brain couldn't help us and develop PTSD, now it's kind of in a different level. PTSD could be developed by something happened to us or something happened to somebody else and we witnessed that. So we can just from a distance be traumatized and from a distance be basically the exposure is enough to traumatize us and to develop even PTSD. It's quite scary really, but what happened in the front of us can create the same amount of fear that push us more than what we can cope with. It is a kind of a bit of examples of what serious enough incident that develop PTSD. I just put here very quick what qualify the experience to move from being a trauma to become post-traumatic stress disorder. These symptoms need to exist between 4 and 6 weeks before we call it PTSD. Otherwise, if the symptoms is there for a short period of time, we will qualify still a trauma, not PTSD. So it's 3 kind of big symptoms that you look for: re-experiencing, flashbacks, dreams, anything can trigger this flashback. I'm attacked by somebody with a red jumper. I'm walking down the road. I'm in a safe place, or I'm sitting in the church, and somebody with a red jumper, and I'm kind of re-experiencing the event. I'm actually as fearful, or I'm as affected the way that I affected when I am attacked. It's only all what I saw is red jumper, but I'm re-experiencing. So this is the kind of one of the symptoms. The other one is the avoidance. I met somebody kind of a few years ago. She hasn't been in the underground system in London for 28 years. And she avoids. She travel 2.5 hours on the buses to avoid 30 or 25 minutes journey by tube. Because when we kind of spent 2.5 years before she could tell me the story behind why. It was so difficult to tell me the story. And the story was when she was kind of a child, really, attacked in the underground system in France, not even in England. But that was trauma, kind of big trauma for her needed to be seeing a therapist for 2.5 years to tell the story. That's how fragile she was. So avoidance. I will not walk at night. I will not travel by train. I will not use plane, and so on. And this sense of hypervigilance. I remember a guy that I worked with, and he was coming back from Afghanistan. He came back from Afghanistan about 10, 12 years prior to when I met him. And he meant to walk in Yoldal premises. We've got a kind of big premises, and we used to have one of the jobs for the guys. This is a drug rehab. One of the jobs is opening the gate or lock the gate, and they need to walk in the dark, something like 3 minutes to 3 minutes in the dark to lock the gate for no intruders to come into the premises. And this is a warrior, this guy that trained to kill. He was terrified to walk the 2 minutes in the dark in an absolutely safe environment. Any child can walk into this, and he was terrified. And we worked for 6 months. And his victory was being able not to run to the gate and run back with terror. He managed to get over his trauma by when he sat down and he didn't need to look behind him every 5 minutes or every 3 minutes and not feeling that terror. So that's hypervigilance. So these 3 symptoms, I'm going a lot slower than what I wanted. If you add to those these three symptoms, interference basically with the ability to regulate emotions or thoughts, or changing in character basically, or ability to manage how the person feels, get so angry or so upset or so or thinking as well, unable to think, regulate the thinking, goes all over the place. Negative self-concept, I'm bad, and deep down I know that I'm bad and I can't get this idea out of my head. So negative self-concept. And obviously in relationships as well, unable to sustain or to maintain, neither to develop or to maintain relationships. When it started to affect the character, we call it complex PTSD. Complex PTSD, and I'm looking at you as well. This is very hard to deal with because it crosses over to other mental health problems. So you can mistake it easily with borderline disorder. You can mistake it easily with schizophrenic. Is that right, Fergus? Or not? I'm just... Yeah, borderline. So it's quite a kind of a difficult... I'm going to move a little bit faster. Now, we're talking about the PTSD and kind of the trauma, if it stayed, the traumatic experience not supposed to develop to or all the trauma develop to PTSD, but some does. But some actually, trauma is big enough to develop other conditions, but not only PTSD. So some of the mental health issues, it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, but the anxiety coming from traumatic experience, or the depression, or the eating disorder. Even some of the medical problems, the issues with kind of heart diseases, issues with obesity, autoimmune system diseases and illnesses can be, trauma can be responsible for that, even though hasn't developed PTSD. So it's more associated with the trauma than the famous post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not going to go into the diagnosis bit because it's a lot of talk and I'm behind. So, trauma and addiction. The relation between the trauma and addiction. Why trauma associated to addiction? What makes it linked up? Basically, the kind of drug or alcohol or any methods of addiction is kind of reduce the sensation, the sense of overwhelming or the effect of the traumatic experience. So it's medicating the sensations that kind of we feel when we are traumatized or suffering from post-traumatic stress. So another kind of point here is PTSD symptoms kind of can be kind of one of the symptoms or some of the symptoms, like being hypersensitive to loud noises or fast moving or flashing or certain sensations that kind of affect us, and the kind of drugs or alcohol can actually manage those sensations that kind of people feel. The trouble with this, it helps to reduce the symptoms of the post-traumatic stress. However, it become bigger problem than these issues that dealing with. You know, the cure become more problematic than the disease. That's the issue. You know, I'm not going to go into more details. Thinking about Andy prepared us to this idea in the first talk. This concept of every bad behavior begins with good intention. This idea of people drinking not because they are bad people doing bad things. People drinking actually to deal with fear or a sense of being lost and not connected, or loneliness. What's wrong with dealing with loneliness? There's no, I'm dealing with my isolation by being, I don't know, cleany, or being more forward, or trying to, the kind of bad behavior, if you boil it down, probably solving a problem, solving an issue, rather than starting from this is bad and I'm doing something bad to, and I meant to do this bad thing. I've never actually met in my 34 years of being in the addiction field, I've never met anyone saying I'm going to be alcoholic, or I decided to be drug addicts. And no one set up for that. In fact, people deny that this is their direction or route. All what they start with, I'm just dealing with the trouble that I'm facing. I'm trying actually to cope with life. That's all. I'm trying to lift my mood a little bit up, to be a little bit happier than, or get away from the trouble that I'm feeling inside. That's all. But end up obviously in a difficult place. So when we come to kind of dealing with addiction through a trauma lens, we maybe, if we can identify the good intention behind the addiction behavior, opens the door for dealing. If we manage to go underneath what's actually going on. Addiction doesn't hang in the air. Somebody become addict and it's just us there, and let's deal with it. As Andy was saying earlier, it's there is something holding this addiction that keep it up, keep it there. Those veterans that came back from Vietnam to America, they lost their addiction because there is nothing holding this addiction when they went back. So there is always a reason to hold the addiction in people's life. And if you deal with that, what's underneath it? Church, even not informed church for addiction or trauma-informed church, but actually church that provide love and support and true community for people that can join and be truly integrated, loved and accepted and respected, will heal those without any need for all this knowledge that we're talking about. You don't need it. If the church there providing enough love will take over all the knowledge that we are talking about, more professional, and it will be very small percentage of people needing the professional intervention. Majority, 90% of the people come to my clinic, I provide counseling, 90%. If they are in a good community with loving relationships, they will not need me, a professional counseling. So here we go. I'm going to move on. So what to do? I'm trying to speed up for this. My minute, only 15 minutes left, is that right? What time did you mean to? So what to do with trauma? I will start with what traumatized person needs. So anybody with this, I kind of put a list. Feel free to add to this list. But biggest point that if you decided that your church or your ministry or your engagement, I'm gonna do anything to help people are traumatized. Basically, I put together some ideas what those people need first and above all, sense of safety. The person wanted to stay safe. That's the main one. Trauma is about I'm not safe and I need to protect myself. I'm terrified, I'm scared, and I need to protect myself. So I put kind of safety in the top. Escape the negative emotions that I'm experiencing here. Soothing the pain. Being in control. And I put safety and control in red, because this is the top two. If you're going to forget this list, just remember the two words in red. The person needs to be safe, need to be in control. Because actually, trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder develop for lack of these two. I'm not safe, I lost control. Most people who are traumatized, they are overpowered and they face life from the perspective of I am at danger and I can't do anything about it. Whatever I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be hurt. I cannot stop it. This helpless place that people experience make them develop the trauma in their lives or post-traumatic stress disorder. That's kind of the bottom line. If we're gonna summarize how trauma, in a very simple 2 words or 1 sentence, is just, I'm gonna hurt and I'm not able to stop that pain. We're not designed to be that out of control in a way. So create the word that one can tolerate, basically coping capacity, being able to cope with what life offering that person, and treat kind of oneself well, and redefine who that person is. If you include this list in your ministry, you are trauma aware, or trauma informed, depending on how much engagement basically with trauma. Okay, I'm gonna put in not to-do list, which is start with do no harm. That's our start. Medical people train to kind of train not to hurt anyone. And after that, learn how not to hurt anyone. And after that, they started to help people how to cure them. Counseling is the same. I was engaged for many years in Christian counseling training, and this was top of our list. Do no harm. Learn how not to harm people in your care, and improve up to that level. If you're up to that level, you can practice. You're safe to practice, and you're going to learn how to help after that. So do no harm. How to do no harm? If you're working with traumatized person, don't give advice. Don't tell them this is how it works, because it's actually very unique personal journey. Don't confront. This is not the type of help that the person need to be confronted with what's wrong with them. You take control. You defeat the purpose of your help if you decided to take control. One thing that always in the front of your eyes, how to empower the person that I'm working with. This is very vital, very important point. Dismiss or minimize. Sometimes people will come to you who are traumatized, not making any sense. The things that they are scared of absolutely doesn't make any sense at all. Not logical. Very hard to keep straight face sometimes. Why is that? What are you talking about here? Don't dismiss emotions, or when the person open up and even share the logic behind this emotion, don't dismiss it. You lose the trust, basically. Speed up the process. I think I'm not going to say anything about that. Andy already explained it much better than me. Don't go faster than the person that you're helping. I remember when I was a teenager, I used to play a lot of football. And one of the guys that used to play with us, he was so enthusiastic and so committed. And he used to run, and he's a fast guy. And he used to run faster than the ball. So, we were little. So he's no good. The ball behind him, it doesn't work like that. You don't go fast. So your clients are in the front of you, don't kick them, obviously, but... don't compare to others the journey, the progression, the experience. Be careful to compare. And this is quite important. Don't go deeper than what you are able to handle. So don't ask the person to open up and share, and you don't know what's going to happen. Don't take risks, basically. If you don't know, play it safe. So many times when things started to come out of hand, just back off. If the person started to disassociate, back off. If the person started to, manifest, if you know what to do, engage. If you don't, back off. Far more dangerous to stay while you don't know what's going on here. People who work with PTSD probably have a vision of what I'm talking about here. So, to-do list. Provide safety. It's the opposite of what we say. Empowering. Opposite of what we are just saying. Be patient. You go with the pace of the person that you're helping. Allow negative emotions. Look, so many of us sitting in this room, including me, Mr. Therapist, we somehow scared of negative emotion, and we are uncomfortable with negative emotion, and we avoid negative emotion, and we need to learn actually how to experience negative emotion and sit with it. How easy for you to go to a funeral? How easy for you to pick up the phone and talk to somebody who lost loved one? Come closer. How close? How far? Is that all right? Shall I say this? Shall I not? I'm on the edge. When somebody hurting and in serious pain, I'm on the edge. It's hard. It's hard for us. So allow the negative emotion to exist. And allow processing thoughts and feelings, boundaries. This is obviously the last point is a model, but we don't have any time of model of helping. This can be integrated in any ministry. Provide rhythm, repetitive, relational, rewarding, and and being relevant. It's all, each one of these concepts provide healing ideas or healing for trauma sufferers. Okay, so connection with self and connection with God is vital. I'm looking at it from a spiritual perspective. So yes, being able to help the person to develop sense of self, and being able to allow or help the person to engage with God can give holistic engagement, the engagement with self and engagement with God. And this holistic approach can be healing to trauma. I'm sorry, I'm speeding up now because I'm all over the place. I have a kind of a model that I use in my practice, how to walk through the journey of healing from a trauma or from post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's a 3-stage healing process. And this can be integrated in a ministry, in a friendship. If you're walking alongside a friend traumatized, or a church program, a rehab, it's applicable, if you like, because it's a 3 stages program. No, it's not a program, it's a concept or journey. Stabilizing and providing safety, there is and you move to enable that the disclosure is enabling the person to process, to make sense, to find a meaning to what has happened to them. And the rehabilitation is the looking forward. It's the ability to move forward and put in place what needed to be put in place in order to kind of move with hope, if you like. I put kind of some ideas for each stage of those, but we're kind of running out of time, and I'm thinking giving at least 5 minutes or so for a question. And so this is the type of stuff that you look for: stabilization, grounding technique, anger management, and anxiety management, referring assessment for therapy. Sometimes people need medication. So that's kind of about the stabilization. Processing, it's just being able for the person to be able to spot when they are triggered, which is the top and the bottom, either freeze or flight responses, and how to stay in the middle, which is the comfort zone where the people are composed, stabilized, able to regulate their emotions and able to think logically and clearly. And the 2 boxes on the 2 sides, what pushes out of our regulated, which is the yellow box, and what keep us there. If you put a window of tolerance on Google, you will get that diagram. I'm sorry, I don't have any time to go through it properly, but it's just one of the models how to process. And moving forward, it kind of looking in the future, planning post-traumatic growth comes out of this moving forward. And people who are there's a concept now, post-traumatic growth is known, and 2 and 3 people who go through trauma therapy able to come on the other side better off than when they were before the trauma. So this is some areas where they get better. One of them actually deeper connection with God and their spiritual life deeper and clearer for them. This is, here we go. I'm sorry, I'm rushed last third. I didn't pace myself, so my apologies for that. But any question, anything you would like to? I'm gonna share my personal view of this. This is I won't call this is the most wise thing, but my personal experience. There is no one. I would say. How do I put this? There is no one unable to think, clever or not very clever, doesn't really affect much the recovery journey. So the amount of intelligence or how stupid we are, not really related to recovery. Recovery is a different route from intelligence. So learning difficulties is not because the person limited in his mental capacity, unable to recover, and what I mean it's a different route. If the person humble enough, if the person open to listen, not resistant, if the person willing to engage, this is what makes recovery strong, rather than how intelligent that person or how fast the person learn. Obviously, people was learning this kind of issues, the coping capacity for them is a bit kind of harder. So it's a harder journey, but I wouldn't call it kind of related. This is just my personal, maybe somebody else here can add to that. So you and you after that. Yeah, go ahead.
That was a very helpful diagram. That was a very helpful diagram you just put up. I've just Googled it because I thought it was very useful. My question is, if you've got somebody in the hyper-aroused state, there's all sorts of handles and things you can get a hold of and obvious things are going on. How do you deal with someone who's locked into the freeze state and in denial that there's a problem? How do you get access to even begin the process of healing with that person?
When the person in that kind of high level of denial, if you look behind that, probably the person is very scared and kind of try to protect themselves from the danger. So it's the patience and providing safety. And enabling the person to be more in control as much as you can. This will be always the key, safety and control. And you keep doing that until the person feels safe enough or in control enough to lower their guards. Otherwise, the guards will be still up. So fighting or try to bring down and how kind of people barriers, if you like, would all what we kind of you do is this is doing harm, by the way, because we don't know what's behind this and how fragile the person behind these barriers. So we need to be very careful not to knock down the barriers without offering alternatives. So we have to be ready with an alternative before we bring down those defenses. One last. This is quite hard because it will be if somebody grown up and started from a childhood, it's quite hard. But in a very simple kind of language, we can provide alternatives, and the alternatives will become a healing alternatives for the person. So the person that hasn't got a family, if the church, if the home group, if the organization provided near family, not even 100% family, but near family concept, that will be a healing. So it's enough, or could be enough, to heal. We found, or the research, I didn't do those kind of type of research. But they found people who have one person, children who have one person in their lives growing up, loved them or provided some level of love, prevented them from developing traumatic kind of post-traumatic stress disorder later on. One. People who didn't have anyone have a very high chance, or a lot higher chance than the ones that found one. So imagine how powerful one person loving one child in their growing up. So you can undo the damage. It takes longer. It's a hard work, but it's possible to do the kind of to undo the damage. And a miracle also exists. The intervention that comes from above, that we're talking about how we process our life, but Holy Spirit comes and can override. There is something even beyond that and touch the very core of us and correct the very core of us. This is a different level now. We're not talking about the miracle, we're talking about the human process. But we can tap on power even beyond all what we talked about today. Thank you very much. Thank you.